And as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the plans for the next year and uh, have it be a continuation or and furtherance of what we're trying to do for the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. And what you see here is a brief agenda. I would like to remind everyone, since we have some new people on the call, what Translation Commons is about. Um, Talk a little bit about this past year, and then we'll talk about some of our plans for upcoming projects. So, Translation Commons is a nonprofit. We're a community of volunteers, and our mission around language is to share knowledge and to preserve and sustain cultures. And in working in that space, we also create economic opportunities throughout the language industry and for the cultures that we work with. In particular, we provide a roadmap and resources for how to build a digital ecosystem where all languages have access to full digital capabilities, and that speakers in any language can create and access digital content of every kind. And as you know, if you want more information, visit our website, translationcommons.org. And also, we have an abundance of videos now on our YouTube channel where you can see recordings of past events and all sorts of educational information. And on behalf of Translation Commons, I want to congratulate and thank all of the volunteers that have worked with us in past years, and in particular in 2022. 2022, of course, had some challenges. There's the pandemic. We had a collapse of our website host, and we had to move our website and resurrect it. And so there were several people who worked on that, and the website's not quite all there yet, but we've made tremendous progress, and you should be able to go through and see a lot of our resources now through the website. Despite the challenges, we've had a number of successes, especially for this group, where we meet monthly, and we've had a number of great speakers and topics. And just a few of the examples, Siva, who's on the call, he did a great talk on the problems and dilemmas of digitizing oral cultures that don't have their scripts ready. And I believe that is also one of the YouTube videos. Bavudi gave a great talk about his efforts to digitize the Chakma language. Michael Wynn is responsible for the Makurtu content management system, and he talked about the challenges and his solution, which is Makurtu, to provide culturally appropriate access for indigenous cultures and their heritage and language data and so forth. Hercules also gave a great talk on his work with the Sioux community. That is a language with only less than 100 speakers. And so he talked about the challenges with that. So that was just some of the great topics we've had here. And then, of course, there was the International Translation Day event, which many people here worked on and contributed to, and it was a fantastic success. As Jeanette was saying earlier, UNESCO was thrilled. They were our partner in this, as well as the International Federation of Translators. But it was the great work of many people in this group who were on the call, who helped us identify speakers, put together the program, and we delivered a really fantastic day and with fascinating talks from all over. And, on behalf of Translation Commons, I want to say thank you to everyone. Your efforts were a great success and also greatly appreciated. And as a part of our work this year, you know about the Language Digitization Initiative. We have created and supplied a great number of resources, and we continue to, some of this, of course, is more than just last year, but we keep fulfilling the mission. The Zero to Digital high-level map to digitization is available. We have a number of guidelines that we've produced. There's the videos and the material that's come out of, I don't know why my mouse or the PowerPoint keeps rolling. So a great quantity of information. We've really done a great job on fulfilling our mission. So thanks everyone. It is greatly appreciated. So let's talk now about 2023 and how we kick off the decade. Our focus is, of course, on language technology. And we believe that through language technology, we can enable Indigenous communities to use the internet, which will enable speakers to share knowledge and have access to knowledge. They can share knowledge about their language and culture, as well as learn about that information through their native language if it's made something that can be made available on the internet. Also, speakers will be able to use social media in their native language, both oral and written, and maintain connections across the world. We can also use language technology when it supports native languages to engage speakers and especially young learners, and have them appreciate and honor their languages and cultures by making use of it and having insights into their culture. We can also use technology for education in Indigenous languages and to record and preserve culture and history in the native language for greater accuracy, right? If it's recorded in the language, then you capture all of the nuance of the language, which is something that gets lost if you have to convert your culture and history to one of the majority languages. As I mentioned, we've produced this digitization roadmap, and it identifies the stages of support for digitization in different languages and how a language progresses to become fully capable digitally. And with that workflow, communities can also identify their current status or the current status of their language and what the next steps are to increase the support for digitization. The workflow starts from the most fundamental description of the language. What are the characters used? How are they used? And then proceeds to describe the need for, of course, input systems, keyboard systems, or other input methods, display systems. And then once you have that capability, you can also create online dictionaries and grammar tools and progress through natural language processing all the way to machine translation. Along the way, the workflow also identifies the skills and professional opportunities that communities can obtain. I won't go through this, but I wanted to point out at least one of the graphics for our technology workflow. It goes through, as you can see on the left, the basics for digitization, and carries across all the way to machine translation. But it also shows the creation of educational resources, the professions that are involved, and also the different kinds of partners we might have along the way helping us in this space. So simply having the description of this workflow was a great advance for people understanding what the elements of digitization are and to start to assess where they are in that space, and that helps them also understand what else they should work on next. So with that as a background, we want to talk about the creation of keyboards for Indigenous languages. And it's an area where we think we can have, excuse me, the biggest potential impact in the coming year. So the thought is, if a community knows their character set, if they're able to describe their character set, if they have a keyboard, they will be able to type in their native language. Also, the skills that are required to create a keyboard, they're very teachable. And we can work with communities and teach communities how to define a keyboard and enable the digitization of it, of the characters, to enable the typing of those characters. And we think that's also scalable to a large number of communities. If we teach a few individuals within a community how to create the keyboard for their language, they can also then use that skill to teach other communities that have similar or related languages. And so this is an area that's scalable. And I'll show you in a second some of the successes that we've had. And we think the more success we have with this, then it enables those communities that are successful to implement later stages of the workflow, because then they can start to type, they can create dictionaries, they can document their language, they can use social media across the internet to connect with other members of their community, and it's a tremendous step forward. Now, the earlier stages, for example, defining the characters of a language, that's a substantial effort. It takes time to correctly identify characters that would be included, for example, in Unicode that need to be encoded. And that the standardization process takes a very long time. So we think if we focus on those communities that already know their character set, but it hasn't been adapted digitally yet, we can make progress in short order for those communities. That's not to say it isn't important to keep working on script encodings and working with communities that want to have language digitization but don't yet have a definition or agreed upon definition of the characters that belong in their character set. That work can still continue, but there are a number of communities that would benefit simply from having a keyboard and be able to begin the rest of the workflow. So we think this is an important effort, a scalable effort, and a teachable effort. So the work doesn't need to fall necessarily to the few experts that we have within our group or that are available in the industry. And as I said, this is a capability that allows for written communication, knowledge sharing and recording, creation of digital dictionaries for the language, and other educational material to be developed. So I hope you all agree that this would be worthwhile and significant effort. And if we expand this effort in 2023, that will enable considerable success throughout the decade. And especially Craig Cornelius and our group has been instrumental in working on keyboard projects, not just this past year, but for much longer time. And this lists some of the languages that were able to have keyboards produced. You see Chakma, and you've also heard from Dev Sunawar in some of our presentations. And you can also find the videos in our YouTube channel, as well as some of these other projects that were implemented in the Keyman tool. And Craig is currently working with Kahunde, which is a Republic of Congo script, in order to create a keyboard for them. And these keyboards can be created for either or both the desktop and mobile platforms. And we now have, I think it's up on our website already, a form where Indigenous communities can request the creation of a keyboard. They fill out a form that just identifies the appropriate individuals to work with in their community and the language that they want to support, and it will initiate a discussion with Translation Commons and people in our group to get further information from the community, and we can help them then to go forward with creating a keyboard. Are there any questions about this or comments?
Tex, I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Julie.
Thank you. I just thought it's worth emphasizing how impactful it will be in a community's efforts to digitize their language to have a keyboard. For a lot of communities, this, I think, will be a huge springboard for them to get started. It is not the only aspect of digitizing, because when a community doesn't have a keyboard yet, they can still start working on digitizing by doing audio recordings and taking photographs and recording photographs of written materials and so forth, and posting them to social media as just a way to just get started. So it's not the only way to get started, but I just think it's worth pointing out this is going to be absolutely hugely impactful for a community that is starting on that path of digitizing their language.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Are there other questions? I can't see it at the because I can only see my screens.
Tabea has
help me out if other people have.
Yes, Tabea has raised her hand. Siva next, and I believe Mikasio also wanted to say something. Tabea,
yeah. I was wondering if there is a way to get involved in this, goal hands-on, like, are you planning to, have volunteers that you train and help, basically have them consultants for these language communities, or what's the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. We can work with you and your students, and we can create perhaps a workshop for them, and also on how to create a keyboard. And as communities come to us, I think it would be great to have them available as resources to help us work with the communities. So I think that's a terrific idea, and we can work with you on that. We'll follow up after the call with you. That's great. Who's next?
Siva.
Yeah. Thank you. It was really a very good effort. I have two small observations, possibly, as a very naive kind of observation. One is wherever the scripts or the keyboards were developed, maybe a small follow-up study kind of a thing to see how it's impacting, how what are the kinds of drawbacks if we can rectify to make it more popular. That's one. Another one is we can also make a kind of a listing of the languages to which we have developed the scripts, and also work out something on which are the languages that require some kind of help. Maybe some of us can list out and then work out with people so that they can approach you. So that's what I
Be
felt.
great. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
Yeah, that's what I want to tell you.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be great, Stephen. We'll follow up with you. Yeah, everybody talks about the 7,000 or so languages that are still used around the world, and I was thinking it would be great if we had really an identification of the digitization status of each of those languages, or in particular the ones that have a character set defined but are in need of input methods and fonts, and that would help us focus the effort. And that's something that's still been difficult to ascertain, but if you and others can help identify groups that are in need of that, that would be great.
Nicasio is next.
Nicasio.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I think this is a very important topic, and like I said in my presentation, we had 5 students in our master's degree, and many of them had a lot of difficulties in writing in their language in the computer. So I think it is very. I would talk with with our university if we can train someone so they have all the characters in their machine before they start their studies. That's all my comments.
Great, thank you. So I mentioned we developed a form where communities can start to request assistance. And for those of you that have, well, I should check. At the time I produced this slide, which was a few weeks ago, the form was not yet on our website. I think by now it is. Jeanette or Simpson, is the form available now?
Yes, I believe it is. And we are working on a specific form for the keyboards. We have now a form for the communities, and we will be creating a very specific one for keyboards, which is not online yet. But it will be within the next couple of weeks, by the end of the year.
Okay, great. Maybe put the other form as an interim solution in the chat if you have a link for that. And we can at least start the registration of who is interested in helping. Okay, and any other comments before I move on?
Sue Ellen has raised her hand.
Just real quick, once we've developed a keyboard application and we've got the script's been registered, is there a necessary step involved in trying to get the various applications to implement new languages and new scripts?
Yeah, it's a multi-stage process, but some of the keyboards can be accessed, for example, through the web. So ideally, every either operating system or application would be able to have this capability, but there are some workarounds in which somebody can work with their characters and be able to type them using web solutions.
Nicasio has another comment.
Yeah, I have a question. So if we need help about this, about the keyboard, do we communicate with you, Tex?
I certainly would welcome that, but Jeanette, what's the recommendation for the way to make the request?
So everybody on this call, we have a personal relationship. Nicasio just sent me directly an email, and we'll get together and we'll invite you to the meeting with the keyboards and everything.
Okay, thank you.
The forum is really designed for people we don't know to be the first approach. But since we know everybody on this call very well, just, send us an email.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. All right. And anyone else? Otherwise, I'll move on.
Please move on.
Okay. So the other piece that is necessary, right? We can have all of you lined up to help create keyboards, but we need to make the communities aware that this resource is available and why they might want to take advantage of it. So we're looking to have a way to promote that the resources and support for digitization, and particularly this keyboard project, are available, and to invite communities to engage with us and our experts and other language professionals so that we can help them not just to create keyboards for them, but to educate people within the communities, to find within the communities people that have enough technical skills where we can teach them how to support their keyboard, and then also maybe help other communities, and to make this really scalable and expand. We're very much sensitive to the idea that we don't want to force communities to be digitized. We want communities that are interested to come and work with us, and so we want to promote that this service is available, and to explain to people why, and explain to the communities what the benefits are from having language technology support for their language, and also to listen to and understand the needs of the Indigenous communities. As you know, as we've discussed here, many communities have particular requirements for how they work with the rest of the world, what they want to share, what they don't want to share, and how they think about digitization, what purposes they want it to serve. So we don't want to impose our ideas. We're looking for those communities that actually want digitization to reach out to us. So we need to do some promotion of what this is, how we go about it, and to be empathetic to those communities when they come to us, and not just say, all right, we do this, this, and this for you, but instead to understand and listen to those communities. So we need to have an outreach program. And one of our ideas, in fact, it's modeled on the success of the International Translation Day event, is to try and repeat that event to some extent, not at the same level. That was 6 hours of presentations. It was a tremendous amount of work. Maybe to do something on the order of a 2 or 3 day event periodically. We're planning to have the first event to be in sometime during the first quarter. And to have some type of periodic presentation and panel discussions. And we have other approaches for outreach. We're connecting with a number of communities. We're also working with UNESCO. We have the ability to promote our information and videos and so forth through UNESCO and other groups. So we can continue to do that. But we think if we have some more events like what we did for the International Translation Day, we can get more exposure to communities and make the information available to those communities to reach out to us. And so our thoughts are to create more of these kinds of events. we can make them themed as we do each event, focus on different types of languages or regions or different types of issues for Indigenous languages and Indigenous language communities. But we think with your help, we can do more of these events. And in general, I think it's a great advance for the industry and for the decade if we do more of these. So we're building on what this community of practice has been doing, which in the past, was a monthly educational presentation. I think we would like to move, if we expand the outreach and the audience for these, then maybe we don't do these events monthly, but as we were doing in this community, the monthly event, we want to build on those of you that have been working with us and attending. Many of you were contributors to the International Translation Day event. So we would like to ask you to work with us in creating more of these types of events. And the kinds of assistance we're looking for is to recommend themes for these periodic events, to help us, as many of you did for the Translation Day event, recruit speakers, work as moderators and other types of contributors to the events. And we think by doing this, we can create greater exposure to the need for Indigenous communities to have language digitization, how we can help and help them understand the benefits and the next steps for each of those communities. I think I'll take a breath here and just ask if this is something that you all think is a worthwhile investment of our time in the coming year.
Siva.
Yeah, it's really because intensifying this will help in reaching a larger sections of people, and also what we can apart from digitizing and designing the keyboards, etc. We also should take up certain topical areas which are linked to their popular kind of beliefs, and that can provoke them to come forward to digitize their events, cultures, and then also languages. I think some kind of a innovative way we should look at, instead of only technically going by getting some people and doing it. But thereby what happens is we can only have a smaller outreach. Instead, I think we should spread our net to larger areas where we can find out locally some kind of groups who are interested in presenting their kind of significant aspects of their culture, so that how that can be used to digitize. Things like that will help. That's what I feel.
Yeah, that sounds great. So we need all kinds of user stories and experience, and for people to talk about what they are looking for from digitization, and to talk about where they're at and how it benefits them, or where it's lacking and where it misses the mark. Right? So it's the only way we get better. But also, those stories are also going to appeal to a wide audience. We certainly don't want to just do technical talks where we say this is how you create a keyboard. So yeah, I very much agree. Thank you, Stephen. Any other comments?
I believe when Tex finishes the presentation, we can have a little bit more discussion on this, because there's a lot of topics here, and at least, try to have a plan moving forward.
Okay. Yes. And then also wanted to recall for everyone, we still are making progress with the Language Digitization Initiative. That's the big umbrella for all of the things we're doing with respect to technology. As you know, we've produced a number of guidelines and the workflow, which I've mentioned, and many of these have been completed and are available. Some of them are very close to completion, and there are others still that we plan to work on. So, as a part of the Language Digitization Initiative, we're still completing or have ongoing the machine translation guidelines, guidelines for repositories, and these others that you see here, and also expanding the zero to digital space. So we're working with the Sunawar language to have them go online. We have a number of future projects having to do with translator training, other educational materials for teachers, and to, as I alluded to, mapping the digitization status of all the languages and creating a database for that. The highlighted issue here is to help us with the events that I spoke about, is to create a steering committee that will help us determine what kinds of events we put on for this year and going forward, what makes the most sense. So this is where we think we're going in 2023. We welcome suggestions and ideas and contributors to producing these guidelines, suggestions for other guidelines, prioritizing the kind of information we roll out. And we'll continue also to produce videos and other content around that. So that's all the presentation I have. We'd like to move this discussion to more of your ideas and what you think of these plans. Maybe you'd suggest changing them in some way. I want to welcome some discussion. So I'll take another pause for comments from people.
If I may ask, all our friends on this call, the idea of creating a steering committee where all of us come together, perhaps on a monthly basis, or we work offline, and we get our, skills and resources together to create something meaningful. Is that something that you would be able to spend a few hours a month to do? Yes, Siva.
Yes, I think it's a good idea, because maybe what we can plan is maybe have 2-3 kind of subgroups, and that becomes instead of having an overarching kind of a panel, you can have subgroups for different arenas. I think there we can intensively work on those areas. That would be that makes the working much more focused.
It's a great idea, Siva. So you're suggesting something like thematic groups, where we have an expert or 2 or 3 experts being part of the steering committee, but being a specific subgroup with the expertise on this specific area. And then that small subgroup creates one event of a couple or 2 or 3 hours. And then the other subgroup will create the next event, and so on. Great idea. Tabea?
I was actually going to also suggest subgroups. I think it's very easy to attend a big meeting and kind of hide in the crowd, and just sit there and listen. That's one thing. And also, I think if we have subgroups, it might give. I always struggle with the timing of the LDI meeting. That's why I don't attend it, right? So if there was a subgroup where I could join that meets at a time that's more suitable, then I'd be more likely to join that. For me, it's never the workload. I can find time to do the work. It's more about the meeting times for me.
Yes, Tabea, you're right. And one of the options perhaps is to also move the LDI sync on an 8 o'clock, Pacific time that we have this meeting always. So I hope this will come in the new year, and maybe, we can enlarge the team. Yeah.
But I don't think it does necessarily has to me, because it will never suit everyone, right? But if there is a subgroup that I can attend, and maybe I don't know if others have that same issue, right? But we have a lot of time zones, right? Then maybe that will actually be a feasible way of organizing ourselves as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can have groups based on different requirements, right? So having a group that is based, for example, in Europe and meets and makes proposals for from from people that can work together easily is one way to organize a group. Another is around a particular theme or organizing a particular event. It could be around areas of interest. If there's a group that wants to focus on certain types of languages, maybe that's a way to organize. So we can be open to all kinds of groupings. I think what's important is, as a part of having a steering committee, is to identify individuals that want to lead a group of a certain type or in a certain region or for a certain language type, or that to have individuals step up and say, okay, I am interested in this area. We will work with as a part of the steering committee, but then also work with people that are also interested in that topic, and we can make that work. I think having a working strategy that is convenient and for topics that people are passionate about is probably a better way to go than just trying to fit everyone together in the same mold. So we can work with you on that. And by you, I mean everyone, right? So if others on the call have an area of interest and are willing to help us with this, we'll work with you to have you. We'll work with you to figure out how to go forward.
Julie?
Thank you. So if I'm picking up, Siva, on your idea, tell me if this is sort of what you mean. I'm thinking that if we reach out to communities and invite them to participate, maybe a good way to do it is to invite them to share with us something about their culture. We're not just diving in and saying, hey, let's work on digitizing your language. We're saying, this is what we're about. We're about language digitization, but we just like to invite you, if you'd like to make a presentation about your culture, anything at all that they want to share, then we're listening to them. That's starting from a listening place. And we don't need to, we can, that's a slow start. We can get to know people a little bit. They can get to know us a little bit, and they can decide and who maybe they're connecting with, and they can learn more about what we mean, because they're not going to understand necessarily what we mean right away about language digitization. So if that's what you mean, I think you've identified a nice way in. That's a nice potential way to connect with people. And who knows what the result will be. Maybe they won't end up wanting to digitize right away. But maybe that gets us a little more recognition and get our name out
Awareness.
there.
Right.
May I ask any of the participants in this call that are interested to invite it to the initial steering committee that will create, the subgroups and the themes and all this, to put your name and your email address in the chat so we can invite you to this meeting in January. And Tex, you have a couple of more things I think you want to go over.
No, not really. This is the discussion that I was hoping we would have, is to invite people to the committee, to identify how, what the committee would consist of. I think the kinds of things we would like the steering committee to do is to define themes for these periodic presentations. Let's call them quarterly, just to put a pin in it, and to invite speakers and to help us with the promotion of these events, and to help us work out some of the logistics for them. So, I mean, that's what an event steering committee would do. And I'm sure there are other types of focus. And so I just would like to invite people that are interested in making these kinds of events happen. If you believe in this type of outreach, to come join us. And there are many areas of the steering committee that we need help with. It's not just any one aspect. It doesn't have to be on defining, what the particular event is, but it could be other areas of event planning as well. So, and with that, I think I'll stop sharing so I can see what
Yeah.
what
Actually,
people are saying.